In the coming years, the smartphone market is facing the most radical turning point since the arrival of the iPhone, and what until recently was spoken of as science fiction is now beginning to leak out of the laboratories of the world's largest tech corporations. We are talking about next-generation transparent mobile devices, smartphones that literally disappear in the hand, turning into glass, light, and interface. In confidential reports and patent leaks, names that could change the industry forever are appearing more and more often. Transparent iPhone Air Vision, Xiaomi Mi Glass, Huawei OptiX, Samsung Galaxy Glass, and a whole new wave of devices that no one is officially talking about yet. These are not just new phones. They are an attempt to completely erase the boundary between the physical world and digital reality. Transparent bodies, hidden cameras, interfaces projected directly into the air, control through gestures, eye tracking, and artificial intelligence. All this is no longer just exhibition concepts, but real developments increasingly linked to the 2026 to 2027 timeframe. Sources inside supply chains are already reporting new types of transparent displays, experimental batteries, optical layers, and neuro interfaces that will allow the smartphone to become an extension of the human being, rather than just a gadget in the pocket. These devices are capable of transforming not only the technology market, but everyday life itself, from how we communicate and work to how privacy, security, and control over information will look. And today, we will break down the biggest leaks, hidden hints, patents, and insider reports to understand who will be the first to release a transparent smartphone, why companies are taking this risk, and whether we are truly heading toward a future where the phone becomes invisible while at the same time knowing absolutely everything about us. In recent months, an unusually dense informational fog has begun to form around Apple, increasingly drawing the attention of Wall Street analysts, industry journalists, and former company employees. This is not just about a new generation of iPhone, but about a possible fundamental shift in Apple's device design philosophy, a move that many inside the industry are already calling the riskiest since the removal of the home button and the transition to fully touch-based screens. According to several sources close to Apple's Asian supply chain, the company is indeed preparing an iPhone 18 with a radically updated exterior, whose key feature will be a new generation semi-transparent body. And if such discussions were previously dismissed as fan fantasies or precautionary patent concepts, the picture is now changing. Leaks align in timing, detail, and technical logic, and most importantly, they are being confirmed by authoritative outlets that rarely publish unverified information, including Bloomberg, Nikkei Asia, and The Information. Sources say Apple has already completed an early stage of internal testing of materials capable of combining structural strength, signature aesthetics, and partial transparency without sacrificing water resistance, component shielding, or thermal performance. Factors long considered the main barriers to such concepts. This is not about a fully transparent glass ghost, but about a complex multi-layer construction in which transparency becomes a controlled design element rather than an end in itself, allowing users to literally see the boundary between the digital interface and the physical device. According to former Apple engineers involved in the development of the iMac and early iPhones, this moment could become a key psychological trigger for the market, because Apple is once again trying not to follow a trend, but to redefine it, turning transparency from a visual trick into a core part of the user experience. Inside the company, this approach is linked to a new visual philosophy of interfaces that began taking shape with the introduction of spatial design, semi-transparent layers, and depth effects in recent versions of iOS, and later evolved into the liquid glass concept, where the interface is perceived not as a flat surface, but as a living environment that reacts to light, motion, and context. Sources claim that the hardware design of the iPhone 18 is being developed in parallel with a deep reworking of the system's visual language, and that the semi-transparent body is meant to become the physical extension of this idea, where the device literally dissolves between the user and the content. At the same time, Apple is well aware of the risks. The market has repeatedly seen bold design experiments turn into commercial failures, but in this case, the bet is on gradual adoption. According to Nikkei Asia, the iPhone 18 will serve as a kind of test platform, limited in volume and positioned as a technological flagship for early adopters. And if the market response is positive, the company is ready to go further, toward creating the first fully transparent iPhone in history, where not only the back panel, but also parts of the internal structures currently hidden beneath layers of metal and glass would become visible. And this is where insiders make their boldest claim. According to them, Apple already possesses nearly all the key technological building blocks required to realize such a device, including new types of batteries with redesigned layouts, modular boards with higher component density, and active shielding systems that allow functional zones to be hidden within a visually clean body. This is not about Apple inventing a fully transparent battery or camera, but about the company learning to architecturally mask opaque elements, turning them into part of a deliberate design pattern where every line and every block looks intentional and aesthetically justified. Bloomberg analysts note that such an approach fits perfectly into Apple's strategy of recent years, in which the company increasingly bets not on raw specifications, but on emotional impact and the feeling of the future that the user literally holds in their hands. This is exactly what, according to many experts, Apple has been lacking in recent years. The iPhone remained a benchmark product, but stopped delivering a wow effect, and a semi-transparent design could become the very visual shock that restores the company's status as the main trendsetter in the world of personal gadgets, especially against the backdrop of competitors that have either moved into aggressive experiments without a unified philosophy or become stuck in an endless race of megapixels and gigahertz. Supply chain insiders claim that Apple deliberately waited for the moment when technologies matured to a level that allows transparency to become not a fragile toy, but a mass-market premium product that meets the company's reliability standards. Moreover, according to the information, Apple is discussing a scenario in which the iPhone 18 will be only the first step in a series of devices of a new visual generation, to be followed by semi-transparent iPads, and, in the longer term, devices where the boundary between the screen and the body disappears entirely. And if such ideas once seemed like fantasy, today they are increasingly discussed not in enthusiast blogs, but in closed presentations for investors and partners, where Apple carefully but persistently makes it clear that the company is preparing for a new era, and that the bet on transparency is not fiction and not a marketing trick, but a real strategic vector capable of changing not only the appearance of smartphones, but the very perception of personal technologies as such. It is especially telling that discussions about a semi-transparent iPhone 18 are emerging precisely now, amid intensifying competition in artificial intelligence and personal computing, areas in which Apple has long been accused of caution and even lagging behind. According to sources close to internal strategic discussions in Cupertino, the company's leadership fully understands that technological leadership can no longer be restored through chip optimization and camera improvements alone. That is why the bet is being placed on a bold, almost shock-like design move that cannot be copied in a single production cycle. The semi-transparent iPhone is meant to become a visual manifesto of a new Apple era, a signal to the market that the company is once again setting the rules rather than following them. Inside the corporation, this project is seen not as a standalone model, but as the beginning of a long-term transition to devices where physical form ceases to dominate digital content, and the gadget itself is perceived more as a window into the ecosystem than as a traditional object. Morgan Stanley analysts in closed investor reports already note that such a move could sharply change consumer perception of the brand, especially among younger audiences, tired of uniform smartphones and searching for visually new forms of interaction with technology. And if the iPhone 18 does indeed prove successful, sources claim that Apple is ready to accelerate the next stage, a fully transparent iPhone, which today sounds like science fiction, but is already being considered inside the company as a logical continuation of the chosen course. In this context, the idea is increasingly voiced that we are not facing another routine lineup update, but standing on the threshold of Apple's boldest design experiment of the last 20 years, An experiment that will either restore the company's unquestioned status as the industry's main innovator or become the most risky decision in its modern history. And that is why more and more experts believe that the semi-transparent iPhone is not just another design, but an attempt by Apple to redefine what a smartphone should be in an era when technology is becoming almost invisible. In the global tech community, an intrigue is rapidly gaining momentum that most analysts considered impossible just a year ago. According to sources working with the ELEC and Korea Herald, Samsung is preparing to unveil one of the most ambitious projects in the history of the mobile industry. A fully transparent next-generation smartphone capable of upending the market and redefining what a phone can be. According to insiders close to Samsung Display's engineering centers, the development has been underway in deep secrecy for more than 5 years, but real technological breakthroughs have occurred only in the past 18 months. They claim the company is close to creating a transparent monolithic device, where the glass itself acts as both the body and the display, and the internal components are hidden so skillfully that the device appears as a single transparent block that comes to life only when the interface is activated. The first signals of the project did not emerge by accident. Samsung began filing patents in the KPO registry for new types of transparent OLED panels, hybrid structural composites, and under-display sensors fully embedded in transparent material. Journalists from MyDrivers and ET News who analyzed the documents noted that some of these developments suspiciously closely match the presumed architecture of the transparent phone. And in November, several insiders working with Reuters reported that the project has already reached the stage of closed full-function testing, and Samsung expects to show the first official teasers around 2026. What is striking is that Samsung, a company that has spent decades competing with Apple and is often perceived as a maker of classic flagships, may become the brand delivering one of the biggest shocks to the entire industry. If Xiaomi unexpectedly jumped into transparent gadgets first, then Samsung, judging by leaks, is preparing not an experimental concept, but a serious commercial product backed by massive scientific research and years of development. Analysts at Counterpoint Research note that if Samsung becomes the first to release a fully functional transparent device, it will be Samsung, not Apple, that sets the direction of smartphone evolution for the next decade. Until recently, creating such a phone was considered nearly impossible. Transparent OLED displays existed, but they were fragile, expensive, and required the electronics to be moved into a separate module. Samsung had demonstrated transparent panels at CES and SID Display Week, but those were exhibition prototypes without built-in computing systems. In a smartphone, you cannot hide the chipset, modem, battery, or camera in a separate stand, and solving this problem became the central challenge. According to supply chain sources, Samsung developed a unique layout, an ultra-thin side module that houses part of the electronics and floating elements embedded inside the transparent glass structure, hidden due to a new transparent conductive material that becomes visible only under direct light, creating the illusion of completely absent components. It is also noted that engineers are testing new semi-transparent batteries, hybrid mini-cells with partial light transmission, and the camera system is fully integrated under the glass, using an improved under-display camera technology refined after several Galaxy generations. Korean analysts also mention a key issue Samsung engineers had to overcome: readability. A transparent display means the user will always see whatever is behind the device: a hand, a wall, a window, sunlight glare. To solve this, Samsung created a multi-layer OLED module with instant dimming mode, essentially an electrochromic glass effect that becomes matte or fully darkened on command. This allows the transparent smartphone to turn into a regular one when the interface needs to be displayed and become transparent again when the screen is off or when special effects are used. According to insiders, Samsung is testing adaptive dimming that automatically adjusts transparency depending on lighting conditions. If Samsung truly presents such a product in 2026, the global market will face a massive technological restructuring. First, Apple will lose a key advantage: its status as the company that sets industry trends. Second, such a smartphone will force competitors to make enormous investments, especially in materials science and next-generation batteries. And third, the very appearance of a transparent phone will serve as a psychological signal. The center of innovation is shifting to Seoul, not Cupertino. IDC experts already note that even a limited premium series of transparent devices could create an aura of absolute technological leadership around Samsung. The name of the device is still unknown. Leaks mention options like Galaxy Crystal, Galaxy Glass Edition, or Galaxy Zero View, but nothing official has been confirmed. Specifications also remain a secret. One thing is certain: Samsung is close to showing the world the first commercial transparent smartphone, and if this happens, the industry will find itself on the threshold of a new era, a time of devices that until recently existed only in movies. Beyond the technological race, a powerful strategic context is forming around Samsung's transparent smartphone. According to analysts from Omdia and display supply chain consultants, the company has increased investments in transparent panels by more than 40% over the past 2 years, and Samsung Display has created a separate closed team working exclusively on 6th-generation transparent OLED modules. This is an extremely rare move that the corporation makes only when preparing products capable of radically transforming the brand's image and strengthening its position in the global market. Insiders claim that within Samsung, the project is already being called a historical challenge, an attempt to create a device that will not merely introduce a new form factor, but demonstrate superiority in materials, electronics, and manufacturing technologies. South Korean media have reported that the company views the transparent smartphone not as a niche gadget, but as the beginning of an entire product line. Transparent tablets, AR-compatible transparent terminals, and even hybrid devices for smart homes where interfaces appear directly within glass surfaces. Experts note that the market is more ready for such a breakthrough than ever. The era of classic smartphones has entered a stage of stagnation, design has become uniform, innovations are incremental, and users are tired of cyclical updates. The appearance of a fully transparent phone could restore the sense of real technological magic, the same effect the first iPhone once produced. It is no surprise that interest in the project is growing faster than in any new Galaxy model in recent years. There is especially a lot of discussion about the potential integration of the transparent smartphone into the Samsung AI ecosystem. According to rumors, the company is developing visual effects in which the interface will float inside the glass, combining augmented reality, electrochromic dimming, and adaptive OLED layers. This creates the effect of an entirely new type of user experience, where the boundary between the physical object and the digital interface begins to disappear. Analysts at TechRadar and GSM Arena emphasize that the leaks look unusually consistent, and industry sources call the project the boldest and most complex in Samsung's history. If engineers have managed to combine transparent OLED panels, new batteries, under-display cameras, composite glass, and miniaturized chips into a single structure, then the world truly stands at the beginning of a new era in mobile technology. And this era may start not with Apple, but with Samsung. Now we wait. Insiders suggest that the first official hints may appear as early as mid-2026, and if the rumors are confirmed, the release of the transparent Galaxy will become an event comparable to the launch of the first iPhone. Only this time, it may be Samsung that rewrites the history of the industry. In technology circles, there is an increasingly common view that 2026 could become a turning point for the entire personal mobile device market. And at the center of these discussions, the name of the Chinese technology giant Xiaomi appears more and more often. According to sources close to the company's top management, Xiaomi has come very close to creating a device that just a few years ago was considered impossible outside laboratory conditions. The world's first fully transparent smartphone, provisionally known under the working name Xiaomi Mi Glass. This information is circulating not only in Chinese media, but also in reports by Western analytical centers specializing in the global consumer electronics market. And more experts agree that this is not a designer fantasy or a marketing trick, but a real engineering project that could be unveiled as early as 2026. If these data are confirmed, Xiaomi will become the first company in the world to publicly announce a fully transparent mobile device, which would automatically rewrite the rules of the game in an industry that for more than a decade has been dominated by evolutionary updates rather than radical technological leaps. According to insiders familiar with the company's internal roadmaps, Xiaomi views a transparent smartphone not as a niche concept to showcase engineering capabilities, but as the foundation for a new category of devices meant to replace the familiar idea of a phone as a black glass rectangle. Behind the scenes, industry insiders say the company's engineers have already made significant progress in next-generation transparent displays, where active pixels are placed on a multi-layer nanostructure that preserves transparency while displaying the interface, and key hardware components such as the processor, battery, and communication modules are distributed along the edges of the device and disguised as optical elements of the structure. This makes it possible to create the effect of a literally floating interface, where the user sees not the phone's body, but an image projected onto a transparent plane. Of particular note is the fact that these developments are taking place against the backdrop of a global race for the so-called device of the next era, where the smartphone is gradually transforming from a standalone gadget into an interface for accessing an ecosystem of artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and cloud computing. It is precisely here, experts believe, that Xiaomi is trying to strike a preemptive blow against its main competitors. Above all, Apple, which is traditionally associated with revolutionary products and sets the tone for the entire market. Sources in investment banks tracking Apple's supply chains claim that the Cupertino company is indeed conducting research into transparent and semi-transparent devices and experimenting with so-called invisible bodies, where the main electronics are integrated into the frame and control elements. However, according to them, Apple is acting extremely cautiously and is not ready to bring such technologies to market until they reach a level suitable for mass production without compromises in battery life, reliability, and user experience. It is precisely this caution, analysts believe, that could work against Apple if Xiaomi decides to take a bold step and present its transparent smartphone earlier. The reputational impact in that case would be enormous, because the company that first shows the world a truly working transparent phone would automatically gain the status of a technological pioneer, while all other players would be forced to justify themselves and explain why they came second. The industry remembers well how Apple once outpaced competitors with the touchscreen iPhone, effectively destroying the market for button-based phones, and now it risks finding itself in the role of the one catching up if the Chinese manufacturer manages to realize its plans. According to Asian business publications, Xiaomi is already holding closed-door talks with several key component suppliers in Japan and South Korea, specializing in transparent OLED and micro-LED panels, as well as with manufacturers of new types of solid-state batteries that allow the creation of batteries with unconventional shapes and thicknesses. This indirectly supports the idea that the company is preparing for mass production of a device with a fundamentally new architecture, rather than merely showcasing a concept for exhibitions. Moreover, sources claim that Xiaomi is already discussing an internal strategy to position MyGlass as the first truly futuristic smartphone, intended to symbolize the transition from the era of classic mobile devices to an era of transparent digital interfaces dissolved into the surrounding space. Against this backdrop, it is especially telling that discussions about transparent smartphones have intensified precisely at a time when the market is experiencing a clear innovation crisis. Sales of flagship models are slowing, users increasingly see little reason to upgrade their devices every year, and the differences between new generations of smartphones are becoming less noticeable. In this situation, a radically new form factor could become the very trigger that makes consumers feel the wow effect again and believe that the smartphone of the future is genuinely different from the smartphone of the past. Analysts note that Xiaomi has historically been able to play this game well, offering products that combine aggressive design, cutting-edge technology, and relatively affordable pricing, making them particularly attractive to younger audiences and emerging markets. A separate layer of discussion is connected to how the appearance of a transparent smartphone could change the very logic of human interaction with digital content. Sources familiar with the My Glass concept claim that the device is being designed from the outset for deep integration with augmented reality, where the transparent screen becomes not just a display, but a window through which digital elements are overlaid onto the real world. In this scenario, the smartphone ceases to be an object one looks at and turns into an interface through which a person perceives the surrounding reality, potentially transforming not only the mobile device market, but entire industries, from navigation and education to medicine and industrial design. In Cupertino, according to sources, the risks associated with such a development are well understood. Internal Apple reports that have reached journalists indicate that the company views transparent devices as a logical continuation of its spatial computing strategy launched with mixed reality headsets. However, Apple traditionally prefers to enter the market with a fully formed product rather than an experiment, and this is precisely what creates a window of opportunity for more aggressive players like Xiaomi. If the Chinese company manages to present My Glass in 2026 and demonstrate its viability in real-world use cases, it could become a moment that enters technology history textbooks as the beginning of a new era of mobile devices. That is precisely why rumors about Xiaomi Mi Glass are being taken so seriously and actively discussed, not only in technology media, but also in business, investment, and even political circles. The question is no longer whether a transparent smartphone will appear as such, but who will be the first to dare to take this step and assume all the risks associated with introducing a fundamentally new technology. If Xiaomi does indeed decide to make an announcement in 2026, it could become the loudest event in the mobile device industry since the debut of the first iPhone, and the moment when the familiar concept of the smartphone finally fades into the past, giving way to the transparent interfaces of the future. After the recent wave of leaks from Asian display manufacturers, supply chain analysts, and several insiders in the mobile chip segment, it has become clear that the smartphone industry is preparing for a sharp turn. Companies that only yesterday were arguing about megapixels, flexible hinges, and charging speeds are now rapidly shifting toward a new idea, creating transparent devices where the body disappears and the interface literally floats in the air. But the biggest surprise is not that the trend is beginning to take shape. The surprise is who is actually ready to lead this race. While everyone expected Samsung or Xiaomi to be the first to show a commercially ready transparent smartphone, an unexpected name has surfaced, one that for a long time barely appeared in discussions about radical form factors. According to numerous sources, Huawei is preparing one of the most ambitious projects in the company's history, a fully transparent next-generation smartphone developed under the strictest secrecy. Informants familiar with the project claim that the key decisions were laid several years ago, when Huawei was looking for a way to bypass the limitations of classical design and reach a level of technology inaccessible to competitors. The company quietly created its own prototypes of transparent panels, experimented with under-display optics, and developed composite materials capable of withstanding stresses that ordinary glass cannot handle. These developments, which no one talked about at the time, have now become the foundation of the future device. According to engineers, Huawei is testing a construction in which the smartphone is a single monolithic block of multi-layer transparent material. All sensors are hidden inside the glass. The camera works through an optical layer, and the chipset and battery are shifted into an ultra-thin edge, almost invisible when viewed from the front. Leaks show that Huawei has managed to solve one of the most difficult problems: adapting a transparent display for real-world scenarios. On a standard transparent panel, the interface gets lost against the surrounding environment. The user sees a wall, a hand, light from a window, and the image becomes unreadable. According to sources, Huawei has implemented a special adjustable layer in the panel that allows the transparency level to change instantly, from a fully transparent mode to a matte dimming that turns the device into a regular high-brightness screen. This effect is achieved thanks to a hybrid structure of OLED and an electrochromic material the company developed for its AR projects in recent years. At the same time, Huawei is betting not only on the visual effect. According to several Chinese tech analysts, the device will feature integration with the new generation of artificial intelligence called Harmony Intelligence Core, a system designed to analyze the surrounding space, recognize objects, read gestures, display holographic elements, and function as a full digital layer on top of the real world. The idea is for the smartphone to stop being just a screen. It becomes a tool through which a person interacts with their environment. Sources claim that this is precisely why Huawei is actively experimenting with transparent structures. They allow interface elements to appear as if they are emerging directly in the air. Among suppliers, there is already circulating information that the company is testing next-generation under-display cameras using multi-level light diffusion. Engineers state that image quality on transparent samples is close to the results of flagship Mate devices, something previously considered impossible. The real challenge has been the battery. Huawei is considering two options: a hybrid partially transparent mini battery and a compact side-mounted high-density battery. Both solutions are still undergoing testing, but according to sources, progress is much faster than expected. If the information is confirmed, Huawei may show the first prototypes as early as 2026. And most importantly, the company views the device not as an experimental model, but as a potential starting point for a new lineup meant to redefine the concept of a smartphone. Some investors familiar with closed presentations say that inside Huawei, the project is called the future of the company after the classical smartphone era. Essentially, the market is approaching a moment when the familiar rectangular body will disappear and the phone will become a visual interface rather than a physical object. Analysts note that if Huawei truly enters the race first, it will completely change the balance of power. Unlike Samsung and Xiaomi, the company has long focused on autonomous computing, advanced sensors, and its own ecosystems. Adding a transparent form factor could return Huawei to the status of a company that sets trends rather than chases competitors. Moreover, the market is already showing fatigue from typical smartphone updates. Users want something that once again feels like magic. A transparent device combining AR, AI, and holographic interfaces perfectly matches that demand. Some sources suggest that Huawei is preparing a closed demonstration for major Asian investors, where it will show early working samples of the display system and adaptive dimming. If the demonstration takes place, it will serve as a signal to the entire industry. A new smartphone era is beginning, and it may be launched not by the usual market leader. Behind the scenes, there are already estimates that the project's success could bring Huawei billions of dollars and restore the impossible innovator reputation the company lost after numerous external restrictions of the past decade. While competitors fight for audience attention with yet another camera upgrade or reworked design, something unexpected is happening around Huawei. The company's internal engineering team has for the first time in several years received the green light for a project whose scale is compared to the transition from button phones to touchscreens. Sources note that in recent months, Huawei has seen a sharp shift in priorities. Developments related to classical form factors are being frozen, and resources are being redirected to experimental directions, the main one being the transparent smartphone. According to people working in the company's research centers in Shenzhen and Dongguan, Huawei's leadership sees the second half of 2026 as a window of opportunity. During this period, according to analysts, the market will face saturation of traditional smartphones, and the audience will begin to expect something fundamentally new. This is why engineers have been tasked with accelerating the final tests of Project Mirror to be ready at the moment when interest in a radically new design reaches its peak. What particularly surprises experts is that Huawei is not trying to create a temporary concept or showpiece model, as some companies have done in the past. On the contrary, the project was originally conceived as a product intended for real production. According to one employee involved in material development, Huawei not only has the technological base, but also a strategic intention to make the transparent smartphone not a symbolic step, but the beginning of a new line of devices that will develop alongside classical models. It is also known that Huawei is considering holding a closed prototype demonstration, not in China, as has usually been the case, but at a specially organized site outside the country to attract the attention of international investors. This move is extremely rare for Huawei and underscores how seriously the company is approaching Project Mirror. Some specialists already call transparent devices a potential restart point for the entire industry, which is why Huawei is currently attracting such intense attention. If Project Mirror proves successful, it could become the very technology that moves the market from the era of classical screens to the era of spatial interfaces. And it will do so not through gradual transitions, but in a single sharp leap. At that moment, the question will no longer be who made the best smartphone of the year, but who managed to offer a new model of human interaction with digital information. In the global mobile industry, something is happening that for a long time no one even tried to discuss seriously. Nokia, a brand many considered a forgotten relic of the 2000s, is suddenly returning to the center of attention. A company whose fame seemed forever tied to the era of button phones has unexpectedly found itself on the verge of the greatest technological reboot in its modern history. According to insiders cooperating with Reuters, Light Reading, and Helsingin Sanomat, Nokia's engineering divisions have been working for more than 2 years on a device that could completely change the perception of the brand. The world's first fully transparent next-generation Nokia smartphone. The project, hidden under the internal name Nokia Spectra, was long seen as a kind of experimental lab fantasy. But in 2025, everything changed. The company for the first time came close to a functioning prototype capable of returning Nokia to the top tier of global manufacturers. What makes the situation even more explosive is that NVIDIA, the company that has become the driving force of the entire AI revolution and recently invested more than $1 billion in Nokia, has now shown interest in the project. And although the investment is officially described as support for AI infrastructure and future networks, analysts at Bloomberg Intelligence say the deal has a hidden purpose. NVIDIA sees a chance to enter the market of future transparent devices and possibly become part of one of the boldest experiments in the history of the mobile industry. The intrigue intensified in early autumn, when several Finnish journalists reported that so-called segmented glass modules had been spotted inside Nokia's research center in Tampere, panels that resemble no existing smartphone form factor. One source claims engineers were testing an unusual structure, a glass block only about 6 to 7 millimeters thick, capable of displaying information across its entire surface while remaining fully transparent when the device is in idle mode. For the first time since the legendary Lumia era, the company has returned to what it always did better than anyone else, creating things that are ahead of their time rather than chasing the market. According to specialists working with European OLED suppliers, Nokia has advanced so far that it has managed to assemble several fully functional prototypes, each combining a transparent display, under-panel optics, hidden internal components, and a new system of glass layers based on semi-transparent composites. If this information is confirmed, Nokia Spectra may become the first device in which the manufacturer has successfully concealed the battery, SoC platform, antennas, and cameras within a semi-transparent structure without breaking the effect of pure glass. The leaks began as ordinary technical speculation, but then took on a completely different scale. First, messages about unusual patent filings by Nokia in Europe and South Korea appeared in narrow engineering channels. Then, researchers at MyDrivers found documentation describing an optical structure with full light transmission and an integrated display system. But the real explosion happened after several DigiTimes Europe journalists hinted that the Spectra project had reached the stage of late engineering testing, meaning it is already close to becoming public. What is remarkable is that Nokia, a company many had written off and viewed merely as a network equipment manufacturer, may strike a blow against modern industry giants, Apple, Samsung, and Google. Bloomberg analysts even stated that if Nokia Spectra turns out to be a viable product, Apple, for the first time in years, may find itself in the position of a follower rather than a trendsetter. But the most surprising part is the involvement of NVIDIA. Investing more than $1 billion, the company has not only secured its place in the development of 6G networks. According to experts, NVIDIA has also become interested in using its graphical AI platforms to build smart transparent interfaces, display systems where content adapts to the environment and can change its opacity in real time thanks to GPU computing. Rumors say Nokia and NVIDIA engineers are already testing prototypes in which the transparent display can automatically darken the background, making the interface readable under any lighting conditions, as if the glass becomes a screen only when the user needs it. The task seems unbelievable considering what transparent panel developers have gone through trying to bring the technology to mass market. Transparent OLED displays were unstable, fragile, required external electronics blocks, and could not provide sufficient brightness. The same principle was used in transparent TVs, where all electronics were moved into a massive base. In a smartphone, such a trick is impossible. Everything, battery, chip, camera, sensors, must be inside. This was the most serious barrier Nokia had to overcome, and judging by the leaks, Finnish engineers succeeded. According to one expert from IT Home, Nokia developed a new layout structure in which all key modules are placed either in an ultra-thin rim about 2 mm thick or integrated into the bottom edge, made of a special semi-transparent alloy. Using this line, engineers managed to place antennas, a vibration system, a segmented type battery, and even a new cooling module. Everything else became part of the transparent glass structure. But the most difficult task is the cameras. In a regular smartphone, the lenses are visible. In a transparent one, they are impossible. Therefore, Nokia uses a new infrared hidden sensor technology in which the cameras are entirely under glass and their operation becomes noticeable only when activated. According to sources, Nokia is creating a device that not only demonstrates transparency, but functions as a full-fledged flagship smartphone with a powerful processor, high brightness, AI-driven interface effects, and an unusual display system. This project may become not just an experiment, but the beginning of a new design era where smartphones turn into glass objects that disappear into space. An IDC report already states that the launch of Nokia Spectra could lead to a shift in ecological and aesthetic paradigms. Brands will compete not by the number of cameras, but by their ability to create invisible devices. If Nokia indeed presents Spectra in 2026, as sources suggest, the smartphone industry will find itself at a new bifurcation point. Apple will face not only the threat of losing visual leadership, but also a psychological effect. Millions of users will remember that Nokia is not just an old brand, but a company that once set the rules of the game. And if now it returns with a device ahead of its time, it will become a symbol that innovation can come from where no one expected it. NVIDIA, according to analysts, may gain a strategic advantage from this project. Its AI modules will become part of a new generation of glass devices, and its investment will become part of one of the loudest technological revolutions of the decade. And now the entire tech industry is frozen in rare anticipation. For the first time in many years, it is Nokia that cannot follow trends, but completely rewrite them. If the company maintains its development pace and avoids critical technical barriers, the world may see a device that becomes a true rupture in the history of mobile technology. Only one question remains: what the final version of Nokia Spectra will look like. For now, one thing is clear. If the leaks are accurate, we are about to see a product that places an equals sign between science fiction and reality. And for the first time in a long while, it is Nokia that may become the symbol of a new era of smartphones, where the device in your hand is not a body or a screen, but pure living glass infused with artificial intelligence. Tension is growing in the tech industry, and more authoritative sources confirm that NVIDIA is preparing a move that could overturn the global mobile device market. The company that in just a few years transformed from a graphics accelerator manufacturer into the most valuable corporation on the planet now appears ready to enter a new era, one in which the smartphone stops being a phone and becomes a fully autonomous AI core in your pocket. And according to insiders, this project inside the company is already called NVIDIA NeoPhone. The pace of developments is accelerating. NVIDIA's profit is growing faster than that of any high-tech giant. Demand for its products is at a historic peak, and competitors lag behind by years, unable to match the speed of the Huang effect. Against this backdrop, according to several Silicon Valley sources, the company's leadership headed by Jensen Huang has made a strategic decision capable of reshaping the entire architecture of the global mobile industry. NVIDIA is entering the smartphone market, and doing so with ambitions unseen even by Apple during the first iPhone era. And this is where it gets truly interesting. More and more signals point to the fact that the Neophone project is not a rumor or a theoretical discussion, but a real, already launched process. Anonymous engineers familiar with the internal plans claim that the preparation phase begins in 2026, and several departments have received strict instructions to shift toward mobile architecture development. Sources from Bloomberg and Nikkei Asia report that NVIDIA is creating closed working groups focused on the mass market rather than the company's traditional data centers and supercomputers. According to analysts, Neophone may become the first smartphone built entirely around AI computation rather than classical mobile functions. It is said that the device's architecture will be optimized to run GPT-class models directly on the phone, without internet, without the cloud, autonomously, instantly, with privacy comparable to a sealed banking vault. That is why many experts describe it not as a smartphone, but as the beginning of the post-smartphone era, where the phone becomes a personal intelligence that also knows how to make calls. Special attention is drawn to a strict condition that, according to insiders, Jensen Huang personally set: Neophone must cost less than premium models from Apple, Huawei, and Xiaomi. This is an unprecedented move, considering that NVIDIA is the most valuable company in the world, and its margins allow it to wage a price war that other manufacturers simply cannot withstand. Analysts at Morgan Stanley and Bank of America already warn that if NVIDIA enters the mobile market with aggressive pricing, the industry will face a shock similar to the arrival of the H100 GPU architecture, when competitors failed to catch up and were forced to adapt to its standards. Meanwhile, more leaks confirm that NVIDIA is actively poaching engineers from Apple, Huawei, and Qualcomm. In Shenzhen and California, closed labs appear, accessible only to a narrow circle of specialists. Insiders also report that NVIDIA is already reserving manufacturing capacity for 2026 to 2027 at Asian contract giants, including those traditionally working with Xiaomi and Oppo. Such actions never happen without a reason. This is a direct signal that the project is moving into active preparation. Analysts call this the beginning of a new arms race. If Neophone indeed receives a chip based on the Blackwell X or Rubin architecture, with hardware acceleration for large models, then smartphones from Apple, Samsung, and Huawei will find themselves in an unexpected position. For the first time in the history of the mobile industry, a player will emerge who controls the most powerful computing infrastructure on the planet, and that infrastructure will become the heart of NVIDIA's future phone. According to employees who spoke with journalists from The Information, Jensen Huang is personally overseeing the device's concept, including the interaction between AI and the user. His idea is simple: a smartphone must become not a gadget, but a digital extension of a person, an autonomous assistant that understands the owner's context, habits, and lifestyle, and acts proactively as a full-fledged intelligence. That is why panic in the industry is growing. At Apple and Samsung, according to Asian suppliers, the new NVIDIA project is perceived as the most serious threat in the past 10 years. If Neophone indeed enters the market in 2026, this marks the beginning of an era in which the smartphone becomes a pocket supercomputer, and NVIDIA becomes a player capable of both destroying the current balance of power and constructing a new mobile reality. According to insiders, the main intrigue of the future Neophone will not be ordinary mobile chips, but a specially developed next-generation processor that NVIDIA is creating specifically for smartphones. This chip will not be a copy of existing solutions. It is being engineered from scratch so it can work with artificial intelligence faster and more efficiently than any device on the market. Sources claim that inside the company it is simply called the Mobile Superchip. It is expected to combine the power of an NVIDIA graphics accelerator with the energy efficiency of traditional mobile processors. In other words, NeoPhone will be able to perform tasks previously possible only on laptops and desktop computers: video editing, image generation, next-level voice assistance, instant data processing, complex games and applications. Rumors suggest that NVIDIA is creating a separate AI acceleration block that will run continuously without heating the phone or draining the battery. This means NeoPhone will be able to understand speech in real time, translate it, analyze images, enhance photos, recognize surrounding objects, and adapt to its owner completely autonomously, without internet or servers. A new memory system is also being discussed. NVIDIA is reportedly testing improved, faster mobile memory that will accelerate app performance, file loading, and multitasking. Insider reports describe it as memory that does not slow down even under maximum load. This is necessary so the smartphone can keep dozens of apps open and remain stable even under heavy stress. Engineers from Asian companies working with NVIDIA also hint that NeoPhone may feature a special cooling system based on gaming laptop technologies. It will help the device avoid overheating even when running powerful AI features, something that remains a problem for ordinary smartphones. There is also an unexpected rumor. NVIDIA is considering a dual-processor layout in which one chip handles everyday tasks, and the second activates maximum power for AI workloads or complex applications. No such system has existed at Apple or Samsung, and if it appears, NeoPhone will become the first smartphone that chooses its own performance level depending on the task. It is also reported that the device may use a new power system that maintains high performance longer than a typical smartphone. This is necessary if NVIDIA truly wants to make NeoPhone a computer-class device in a pocket. According to supply chain sources, NVIDIA is paying no less attention to the device's camera. Rumor has it that NeoPhone may feature a new imaging system where artificial intelligence, rather than traditional optics, plays the key role. The company is considering a combination of a large sensor and an advanced AI algorithm that enhances sharpness, lighting, and detail during the shot itself. And most interestingly, according to contacts in Silicon Valley, NVIDIA is indeed considering creating a separate chip lineup exclusively for NeoPhone in order to fully control its performance and avoid dependence on Qualcomm, MediaTek, or other suppliers. All these technologies make NeoPhone not just a smartphone, but a device that could become a new standard in the industry. And more insiders agree on one thing: the world is on the brink of the biggest technological revolution of the decade, and its initiator will not be Apple, Huawei, or Samsung, but the company whose chips already run all AI processes on the planet. If NVIDIA truly releases NeoPhone, the global market will never be the same. We are living in a moment that will later be compared to the appearance of the first iPhone in 2007, but most people do not yet realize it. Back then, button phones seemed eternal. Nokia controlled the market, BlackBerry was the standard for business, and Apple was perceived as a company making beautiful computers for designers. Today, history is repeating itself almost mirror-like. Only now, in the place of Nokia and BlackBerry are smartphones as a whole, and in the place of Apple in 2007 is OpenAI, a company that is rapidly moving beyond software and stepping into territory no one has seriously entered before: the creation of a new class of personal devices built around artificial intelligence. And the most important thing is that this is not just another gadget, not a new phone, and not a smart assistant, but an attempt to completely rewrite the logic of how humans interact with technology. OpenAI is no longer just a company that makes a chatbot. It has become an infrastructure player on a global scale. Over the past few years, OpenAI has turned into the brain of the digital world. ChatGPT is used by hundreds of millions of people and is being integrated into operating systems, business processes, medicine, education, finance, military development, and government structures. In effect, ChatGPT has become what Google was in the early 2000s, a gateway to information. But OpenAI understands that control over software is only half of the power. True dominance begins when you control the device through which a person sees the world. Apple understood this better than anyone. That is why the iPhone became not just a phone, but an extension of the human being. And now OpenAI is trying to do the same, but at a fundamentally new level. For the first time, information about a new OpenAI device has begun to surface not through leaks, but through cautious yet highly revealing statements by Sam Altman. He openly says that the modern smartphone is an outdated concept. Screens, apps, constant attention switching, endless notifications. All of this is architecture of the past, designed for an era when computers were dumb and humans had to manually control every action. Artificial intelligence changes the very essence of the interface. If a device understands you, your context, your habits, your voice, your schedule, your emotions, and even your intentions, why do you need a screen, icons, and menus? The new OpenAI device is an attempt to create an invisible computer, a device that does not demand constant attention, does not distract, does not pull you into endless scrolling, but instead works in the background as a digital intelligence partner. In essence, it is a personal AI that is always nearby, always in context, and always understands what you need, sometimes even before you do. And this is where the direct threat to the iPhone begins, because the iPhone is a device that requires you to look at it. The OpenAI device is a device that looks at the world together with you. A key moment in this story is the involvement of Jony Ive, the person who for decades shaped the visual and philosophical language of Apple. He knows everything about how to make devices people want to hold in their hands. And if Ive joined this project, it means he believes that the smartphone as a form factor is truly nearing its end. This does not mean phones will disappear tomorrow, but it does mean that the center of technological gravity is beginning to shift. Apple today is in an extremely difficult position. On one side are enormous financial resources, an ecosystem, billions of users. On the other is a clear lag in fundamental AI. Siri lost this race before it even began. Apple Intelligence, despite loud announcements, remains essentially an add-on to an old architecture. Apple is trying to embed AI into the smartphone, while OpenAI is trying to build a device around AI. These are fundamentally different approaches. Experts increasingly say that Apple is repeating Nokia's mistake by underestimating the scale of the shift. A smartphone is a concept in which the user controls the machine. An AI device is a concept in which the machine helps the human control reality. And that is where the revolution lies. The OpenAI device does not require you to use it. It exists next to you, like an intelligence. You speak and it understands. You think and it suggests. You live and it adapts. It is not a screen, it is a presence. Experts predict that such devices will become the new standard within the next 5 to 10 years. Just as button phones did not disappear immediately after the release of the iPhone, smartphones will not vanish overnight either, but their role will change. They will become secondary screens, while the primary interface will be voice, context, and AI logic. And here Apple risks finding itself in the position of a follower, because OpenAI is building its system from the ground up without being tied to old forms. If OpenAI succeeds in being the first to create a mass AI device that truly changes user behavior, it will become the biggest technological shift since the emergence of smartphones. It will be the moment when people first realize that the screen is no longer the center of their digital life. The center will be intelligence. And then the question will no longer be what phone do you have, but what AI do you have? The world truly stands on the threshold of a revolution, a quiet, almost invisible, but fundamental revolution. Just as once no one believed that a touchscreen would eliminate buttons, today many do not believe that AI devices will displace smartphones. But the history of technology is always on the side of those who change the paradigm itself. And if Apple does not truly enter this race, if it continues to refine the old form instead of creating a new one, its niche may be taken. OpenAI and ChatGPT have already become a new standard of thinking for millions of people. The next step is to become the standard of their everyday life. That is why OpenAI is in such a hurry. The company understands that the window of opportunity is limited. If they are the first to establish themselves in people's minds as the personal intelligence, competing with them will be almost impossible, because changing a phone is easy. But changing an AI that has known you for years, that remembers your habits, your way of thinking, your fears, goals, and weaknesses that is already a psychological barrier. This is a new level of attachment that no smartphone could ever provide. Apple, in turn, is stuck between eras. On the one hand, it understands the threat. On the other, it cannot abandon its most profitable machine, the iPhone. Any radical move toward an AI device automatically undermines smartphone sales. And here, Apple falls into the classic trap of a large corporation. To survive in the future, it has to destroy the present. But doing that is incredibly difficult when the present brings in tens of billions of dollars every quarter. OpenAI does not have this problem. It has no hardware legacy, no outdated product lines, no need to defend an old ecosystem. It is building everything from scratch, around AI, around context, around the future. This is exactly how Apple once overtook Microsoft in the mobile market. And now history may repeat itself, only with the roles reversed. The history of technology is always ruthless to those who ignore paradigm shifts. And perhaps in a few years we will remember smartphones the same way we remember button phones today, with light nostalgia, but with a full understanding that they belong to the past. Because the future is not a device, the future is intelligence.